not on. Welcome, still not on. Welcome all to Speaking Proudly 2025. My name is Emily Geiger, and I am the Director of Education and Outreach at Equal Rights Institute. I travel the world speaking and training pro-life advocates how to have more respectful and productive dialogues about abortion, conversations that can actually change hearts and minds. 2 years ago at Speaking Proudly 2023, I had the proud task of getting to speak as a judge in this final round. And today it is my privilege to serve as the spokesperson for the organizers of Speaking Proudly, who join me in thanking you all for being present today in this historic rotunda as we determine the 2025 winners. As a woman who knows the importance of speaking and using language effectively, I'm honored to be part of Speaking Proudly, which rewards free and responsible discussion of foundational public policy issues. Thank you, organizers, for inviting me. I would like to begin with a special welcome and hearty congratulations to this year's Speaking Proudly competitors. Chosen by a blind process on the basis of outlines they submitted back in August, the 2025 competitors have spent all day delivering speeches that reveal their ideas about the consent of the governed in America's 250th year. We don't yet know who any of you are, but we admire your willingness to take on the challenge of researching the topic, developing your ideas, and presenting them to judges and audiences in this historic venue. Our hosts for this one-of-a-kind competition are members of Metro Republican Women and members of other clubs of the Minnesota Federation of Republican Women. In 2018, these women, all volunteers, gave birth to the idea of a statewide competition that would promote and reward responsible public discourse among Minnesota's high school girls. Republican Women, again, all volunteers, fund, promote, publicize, and staff the competition. But the contest itself is scrupulously nonpartisan, open to girls of all political persuasions or none at all. The blind admissions and scheduling process guarantee that no one, not organizers, not judges, not even this MC, knows the name, school, hometown, or political preference of any competitor. Handling sound and videography today are professionals from the Ridgeway companies. Other technical assistance courtesy of Alpha News. We are grateful, too, for the assistance of the staff of the Minnesota State Capitol and volunteers of the Minnesota Historical Society. Finally, we thank our many generous donors and volunteers. Without their sacrifices, Speaking Proudly literally could not happen. Together, we're doing something wonderful today, and we're doing it in a magnificent public setting. It is fitting then that we begin with prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. To lead us, please welcome Rosalind Tressel, a Speaking Proudly veteran and faithful supporter, who has traveled here today from Bismarck, North Dakota, where she is a student at the University of Mary. Rosalind, please come to the podium.
All right, thank you all for having me. Please join with me as we pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for this day of fellowship and competition that you have given us. Thank you for the relationships that we've built today and for the courage we have received. Bless our words that they may be true, good, and beautiful in your sight. Holy Spirit, send down your inspiration and spirit of charity as we compete and share in life together today. May God bless us, protect us from all evil, and give us peace. And join me in saying, Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Now, as we turn our attention to the flag, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic under which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good luck, contestants.
Thank you, Rosalind. From the first, Speaking Proudly has been known for attracting respected, accomplished judges, fine communicators from every walk of life who donate their time and expertise to helping Speaking Proudly competitors grow in their ability to use language responsibly, persuasively, and ethically. The Speaking Proudly program includes brief biographies of all of our remarkable judges, including those I am about to welcome. Please hold your applause until all judges of today's final round panel have been introduced. Judges, please rise when your name is called. First, Dr. King Banyan. He's a professor of economics and director of the Center for Policy Research and Community Engagement at St. Cloud State University. A former radio show host, Dr. Banyan writes prolifically and speaks frequently on the state of the greater Minnesota economy. I'm told he's also a fine singer. Next, Catherine Kirsten, a longtime columnist and respected authority on education issues and senior policy fellow at the Center of the American Experiment. Ms. Kirsten writes and speaks frequently on education and culture topics for print and broadcast media. Third, Scott Wynne Johnson, a graduate of St. Paul Academy, Dartmouth College, and the U of M Law School. Mr. Johnson practiced law for 35 years and co-founded the much-lauded Powerline blog. He writes not only for Powerline, almost daily since its founding in 2002, but also for the country's best-known publications. Our fourth final round judge is Annette Meeks, former Chief of Staff to Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, and aide to Minnesota Congressman Vin Weber. Back here in Minnesota, Ms. Meeks serves on the Met Council and ran for Lieutenant Governor. She is founder and CEO of Freedom Foundation of Minnesota, which advocates for research-based solutions to the problems that face our state. Ms. Meeks is a tireless volunteer and a frequent media guest. And completing our final round panel, Martha Najola-Moli, an economist with the Center for the American Experiment. Ms. Najola-Moli grew up in Malawi, a developing country in Eastern Africa. Having earned a master's degree from Troy University, Ms. Najola-Moli researches, writes, and speaks about the effect of government, fiscal, and regulatory policy on Minnesota's economy. You can find her work at PragerU and other online and print publications. Speaking Proudly competitors, you must feel honored and inspired that your judges today have these remarkable, remarkable things to say and to want to hear what you have to say as well. They're taking this time out of their lives to listen to you and your 8-minute speeches, and I think that that's quite incredible. Thank you to our final round judges. Speaking Proudly limits each competitor to 8 minutes speaking time, a fact that makes our timekeeper a real person of importance. Would our timekeeper, Sue Nippert, please rise? And now, speakers, for the last time today, the rules governing this competition. Competitors will deliver in English a persuasive speech of up to 8 minutes in length. No visual aids or props may be used, but a script or note cards are permitted. Use of cell phones or other electronic devices by anyone during the round is strictly forbidden. No audio recording, videography, or still photography is permitted during the round, except by a Speaking Proudly official or a credentialed member of the press. The speeches will be timed. The timekeeper will display time cards when 7.5 and 7 3/4 minutes have elapsed. When the 8-minute mark is reached, the timekeeper will display the stop card, at which point the speaker may finish the sentence she is currently speaking. Judges have been advised to substantially downgrade any speaker who continues beyond the sentence she is speaking when time expires. The Speaking Proudly tabulators have calculated the 3 top scoring speakers from the day's competition. Speaking order among those 3 top scorers has been determined by lot. When I announce each of the final round speakers, she will come to the podium to test the microphone, using a brief quotation that I will provide. That microphone test will not figure in judges' rankings, nor will it be included in the 8-minute speaking time. The speaker may begin her speech as soon as her microphone test has concluded. As a final reminder, these speeches are being recorded and live streamed, so please remain quiet. And no photography, no recording, no use of any cell phone or electronic device until the final round is concluded. Now, to the final round speeches. Good luck all. Do we have the order, please? They're not ready yet. Okay, just one moment. We will let you know as soon as we have that order. I've been informed that they are still working on tabulating those scores. It should be about 5 minutes before we're ready to go. Thank you. While we are waiting to get the results of who's going to be speaking today for our competitors, I want to welcome back to the podium Rosalind Trussell. Rosalind has had the amazing experience of getting to be part of this competition, and thanks to what she learned and experienced here, go on to do some amazing things out in her life, out in college. And so I would love to invite her back up to talk a little bit about that. Rosalind.
Thank you so much. I know this is all very unexpected, so thank you for your patience as we're waiting to hear the final three winners of the competition. This is very exciting. So I wanted to talk about the experiences that you get because guess what? I didn't win, guys. My speech wasn't that good. I had a lot to learn, guys. But here's the thing. I learned a lot by doing this competition. And if I did not do this competition, I would not be where I'm at today. And so, Sherry Wallace, if you haven't met her yet, she's an amazing woman. And every single time she'd reach out to me, she's like, hey, Speaking Proudly has this event, and we need people to represent. And she's like, do you want to come? I'd be like, sure, why not? Why not just go and represent an amazing competition, an amazing group of women, and show off how great they are? And so my encouragement to you competitors, whether or not you win, these opportunities will come your way. And I encourage you to go after them because they have shaped me to who I am. For example, I have been on 2 radio shows. I've been on a podcast. I've been to at least 2 galas for Speaking Proudly. And this is just a limited example of what Speaking Proudly has done and can do for you. Had I not done Speaking Proudly and not represented them, I would not be going into politics as a major. I would not be surrounded by the great people I am in college, and I would not be studying something I'm so very passionate about. So as I'm concluding up this little snippet, I encourage you, even if you don't win and you're feeling super discouraged, go after those opportunities, those experiences. There's a wealth and rich of them in this competition. Thank you so much.
All right, I think we are all very excited to hear from our first speaker. So, good luck to all. Chosen at random, our first speaker in this final round is speaker number 510. Speaker number 510, please come to the podium.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Think back for a second. When was the last time you felt that something wasn't fair? When I was a child, I had a profound sense of justice. When my parents punished me for breaking a rule, I often questioned whether it was fair. I mean, I know I'm not allowed to eat snacks before dinner time, but I bought them myself. Shouldn't I have had the right to eat them whenever I wanted? Some of you may have felt the same, whether it was when a sibling falsely accused you of doing something you never did, or when someone cut in front of you in a long line, pretending not to see you. We all want to be understood. We want our presence to matter, and we want justice. That instinct for justice as children is evidence that we are born with unalienable rights, endowed upon us by God, our Creator, rights that no one has the authority to take away. This principle of unalienable rights seems like common sense, yet it is coveted and challenged, because when we don't have ownership over our own rights, we become easy to control. Take the colonists, for example. King George III violated their rights. He profited off their labor, imposed heavy taxes, and quartered British troops in their private homes. These intolerable acts demonstrate how far the crown had gone in ignoring consent. As a response, the founders created a new system, one that would draw its power from the people themselves. John Locke said in his second treatise of government, 1689, that, quote, "Government is based on the consent of the governed," end quote. In other words, government only works when its power is given and maintained by its people. So the critical question is this: does the government today function by the consent of the governed? Although today's government does not fully abide by the consent of the governed in many areas, it can. The founders created a system of remarkable potential, yet even the best of systems rely on the virtue of those who lead it. And our greed-plagued world threatens that very consent. We see this happening today. PoliticsPA.com wrote in an article titled, "Pelegi 12 co-sponsors introduce electoral college bill, the unfortunate story of failure to abide by the consent of the governed." In 2013, Pennsylvania's congressional map was drawn to favor Republicans. As a result of these gerrymandered districts, the electoral vote leaned red, despite a majority Democratic vote in the state. This is a clear misrepresentation of the people's will. Ironically, when the maps were later redrawn, it unevenly favored Democrats, proving how both sides can manipulate the system. The New York Times puts it best in their 2018 article, "Democrats didn't even dream of this Pennsylvania map," when they wrote, "This new map is better for Democrats by nearly every measure." And this is not surprising, because this is the map that Democrats themselves proposed. We see areas of lack of consent in our very state. On May 11th, 2024, state leaders approved a new flag design. Some felt unheard and misrepresented. Despite over 11,000 signatures petitioning for a reconsideration of this flag's design, the governor has yet to respond, according to Haley Phelan in an Alpha News article published last August. Though our government was built to reflect the people's will, corruption and apathy threaten to silence it. Yet, we are not hopeless. The government created a remarkable system that caters to the consent of the governed. Systems like checks and balances protect that consent. Representation ensures that every voice can be heard, allowing the government to accurately respond to the wishes of the majority. Moreover, the very act of voting in and of itself is proof that we have consent today. So if our government was built to honor the consent of the governed, why then do we still see the government drifting from the people's will? The role of the government is to protect the unalienable rights of the people. But that implies that therein is an attacker, human nature itself. Humans are naturally selfish, greedy, and corrupt. The controversial 1971 Stanford prison experiment exposed how quickly ordinary people, like you and me, can become easily corrupted when given power. According to Abisco.com, 24 healthy college males were randomly selected to act as a prisoner or as a prison guard. Quickly, prison guards became abusive with their newfound power and authority, subjecting their peers to humiliating and even traumatic punishments. And prisoners broke down in distress. What was supposed to last for 2 weeks ended in just 6 days. It doesn't take long for me to convince you that when humans are given unchecked power, we become easily corrupted. This is the nature of the governed. So what can we do? Although the American system was built to strive for justice, it is still run by we, the people, and the people are flawed. But that's exactly why we must act. We as Americans have a great right, voting. When we vote, we get to consent to who governs us. Therefore, we must choose moral leaders and be moral ourselves. Although the American government today does not fully reflect the consent of the governed in many areas, it has the potential to. In order to protect that consent, we must support the leaders who reflect integrity, whether that looks like doing your research and getting to know the candidates, attending rallies and placing signs in your front yard, or volunteering at the voting booths. As Americans, we must be informed, active, and principled. We must vote with integrity, speak with conviction, and act with courage, because our government will only ever be as moral as its people. If we want justice, we must choose to act justly ourselves, because in the end, a moral government begins with moral citizens.
Thank you. Judges, please give me a nod so I can be sure you're ready for our next speaker. Chosen at random, our second speaker in this final round is speaker number 640. Speaker number 640, please come to the podium.
I say to you that our goal is freedom, and I believe we are going to get there, because however much she strays away from it, the goal of America is freedom. And that was Martin Luther King Jr. Sign the waiver, sign the contract, and enter the extreme haunted house. What's in the contract? Anything from physical to psychological torture. Do you want to get out? Try using the safe word, although no guarantees it'll actually work. Welcome to McCamey Manor, right here in the United States, a place where you agree to slaps, degradation, hair pulling, being held underwater, and numerous other forms of abuse. Sounds fun, doesn't it? But don't worry, you've signed the waiver. You've signed the contract, which makes all of these actions legal no matter what, right? Wrong. A contract is a legally binding document between two parties that the government recognizes and enforces. The key word here, legal. The government will only recognize a signed document if its conditions are legal. How McCamey Manor, yes, a real place, has been allowed to operate, I truly don't know. But we can apply the principles of a contract to consent in the government. The government may not infringe on our rights. So just as a contract for physical abuse is invalid, so too is consent that would allow for this infringement. Perhaps we should clarify consent. Technically, consent is simply affirming, agreeing, or allowing. But are there bounds to this? Could I consent to become a slave? There are some people who think that true freedom implies the right to sell yourself into slavery, but here's why we apply our contract principle. Just as a contract to do something illegal isn't even recognized by the government, a free society cannot allow its people to consent to destroy their ability to consent. Reasoning from the nature of man, the true role of the government, and the benefits to society, we can see that consent has moral bounds. And when applied to the government, we can understand that consent never lets the government overstep its limitations. Okay, so the nature of man sets the precedent for this consent of the governed. But what does that really mean? Well, man has a right to self-determination. That's what liberty is. Man also has a greater nature over animals through his ability to achieve and make choices. All of this is involved in consent. Man freely chooses to consent to protect his ability to achieve. Man is born independent and seeks to be free. John Locke formed the proper standard of the government based on the fact that this institution doesn't need to be involved in every aspect of our lives to protect our ability to achieve. This is also why a government functioning within its limitations allows for a free market. Adam Smith, a champion of the free market, pointed out in The Wealth of Nations that man seeks his best life, always. In this world, he needs help to attain that. Consenting to be governed by an entity with power and authority is the way man does this. In a truly free and consenting society, the government's only role is to protect the governed from force and fraud, the two things that take away a person's natural rights. To discuss consent as a mere agreement without limitations is to validate totalitarian government. Thomas Hobbes saw society as under a social contract, where us citizens would give up all of our rights to an absolute ruler for peace. Here, consent was nothing more than an obligation. Pragmatics John Dewey and James Hayden Tufts argued that our rights came from the outside, from society. Here, consent was simply assumed. At least Machiavelli was a more honest authoritarian, recommending that a prince rule through fear, disregarding any concept of consent. Our founding fathers fought these ideas through the US Constitution. America uniquely recognizes the importance of consent, but she also recognizes consent's limitations. The Constitution and Bill of Rights properly direct the government to serve its people through this limited agreement. We, the people, consent to let the government protect our rights. But that's it. That is the extent to which we can consent. When the government remembers its only role, nobody gives up their rights in the process. Now, limited consent isn't just my moralistic political interpretation of the government. It's also the most beneficial approach for bettering society. When the government becomes the market, it implements policies that affect trade, profits, and wages. No matter what the intentions behind these policies might be, they only have negative side effects. By placing roadblocks at every turn, they hinder an individual's ability to achieve in the market. True freedom of self-determination is not possible, and thus, neither is proper consent. An individual here cannot maximize their benefit to society. In his book, FDR's Folly, historian Jim Powell describes how government involvement prolonged the Great Depression. There had been many other major crashes in US history, but they generally lasted under a year. Because of artificial government tampering in the economy, the free market was not able to organically correct the 1929 stock market crash. This disaster was so devastating that many Americans gave their consent to let the government overstep its limitations. If this consent had been properly invalidated, the Great Depression would have ended much sooner. Today, too many people think the government exists to subsidize its citizens to fix different crises. Numerous policies exist to provide handouts and provide greater protection, but in exchange, citizens must agree to larger taxes, less property freedom, and greater overall government intervention. Like the Great Depression, we're overstepping our bounds for what we can consent to. And also like the Great Depression, we're only amplifying the problems. No matter how good they sound, we must eliminate policies that let the government's role become too large or too vague. Any authority we do give the government stems from something that is embedded within our own incredible nature. This is what our forefathers understood. The government works for us, not the other way around. We don't consent to use the government to get ahead. We consent because we have rights that are worth protecting. Don't let the government take your role. Understand that you are consenting to protect your individuality, your humanity. The consent of the governed is the best guiding principle for a nation that respects individual value. As the governed, may we all consent with such purpose.
chosen at random, our third speaker in this final round is speaker number 515. Speaker number 515, please come to the podium.
Do I stand on this or? Okay. This quote is from Eleanor Roosevelt. True patriotism springs from a belief in the dignity of an individual, freedom and equality not only for Americans, but for all people on earth. About 250 years ago, America became an independent nation. However, is the perfect idea laid out in the Declaration of Independence that, quote, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, end quote, possible to achieve? Speaking Proudly's competition theme is the consent of the governed. And today I want to tell you about a 200-year-old practice in America that may undermine this consent and is arguably one of the most fun words to say in the English language, gerrymandering. Today, we are going to talk about the consent of the governed and how this may be altered by the practice of gerrymandering. We're going to do this by exploring the 3 C's: clarifications, complications, and conclusions. First, let's begin with the first C, clarifications. There are 2 types of gerrymandering, racial and partisan, and for the purpose of this speech, I will only be discussing partisan gerrymandering. Now, there are 435 congressional districts all over the country. They are divided by population among the states and make up the House of Representatives. When a vote of 218 or more is met in the House, laws can be created and then passed to the Senate. However, Democrats and Republicans do not usually agree on legislative policy, so a sound majority must be reached. These lines are redrawn every 10 years with the census, and these new lines, if redrawn just right, can make this majority in the House easier to achieve. Gerrymandering is the practice of altering these district lines to create party-specific districts. Now let's talk about the consent of the governed. I mentioned earlier this phrase that comes from the Declaration of Independence, quote, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, end quote. This means that without the involvement of the people, government simply isn't possible to achieve. There are many ways that this consent is expressed. The variable that I want to focus on is voting. When we vote, we consent to be governed by certain representatives we vote for, whose policies and values we agree with. And I am beyond excited to turn 18, because this means that I will be able to participate in the blessing we have in America to issue this consent. Another fun side note is that gerrymandering comes from a unique word history. Now, in 1812, Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry signed a redistricting law that would redistrict his state in a way that best represented his political party. The Boston Gazette creatively described one of the new districts that was oddly shaped as looking like a salamander, or, cleverly named, a gerrymander. Thus, the term was born. Now, with all that clarification out of the way, let's look at the second C, complications. As you can probably assume, there are some problems with gerrymandering. The first and most obvious complication is that gerrymandering gives some votes more power than others. If I'm in the minority of a gerrymandered district, my vote will not have nearly as much weight as someone in the majority. So why would somebody in the minority of a gerrymandered district vote? Because ultimately, they know who is going to be elected before election day even happens. The second complication comes from a current gerrymandering war being waged in America. The Texas Tribune writes that on August 29th, Texas passed a bill that would redistrict their state, and this new map would give 5 more Republican seats to the House of Representatives. And this is where California enters the battle. AP News reports that just a few days ago, on November 4th, California passed their own redistricting map, which would give Democrats 5 new seats in the House of Representatives. ABC 10 records an interesting statement from California's Governor Gavin Newsom, who said, quote, "We will pick up 5 new seats with the consent of the people," end quote. Now there are 2 things to note here. First and most important is that these 2 states are redistricting without the census happening for another 5 years. The second thing is that Governor Newsom is partially correct. Ultimately, the people in the states of California and Texas did consent to be governed in this way when they elected these men to be their governors. However, now, with these new maps in place, their consent will be altered in future elections. These new districts are ultimately a poor representation of the people of California and Texas, but is a problem that both sides of the political spectrum contribute to. And with Texas's original actions on August 29th, I think we can expect to see more state redistricting happening very, very soon. So ultimately, this leads me to the third C, conclusions. So, does gerrymandering really alter the consent of the governed? Well, President Obama referred to the practice in his final State of the Union as a way for politicians to pick their voters, and not the other way around. When a district is gerrymandered, governments derive their just powers from a select group of hand-picked individuals that will vote the way you want them to. And this is a direct violation of our consent. I think gerrymandering at its core is best summarized by historian Bernard Groffman, who wisely said that, quote, "Were the founding fathers aware of the concept of gerrymandering?" That's like a baby question. Of course they were aware. End quote. Elbridge Gerry, a founding father, invented this practice. And although our founding fathers knew about gerrymandering, no action was taken to prevent it. The conclusion I want you to remember is that gerrymandering is ultimately a result of our constitutional republic and is ultimately inevitable. Every 10 years with the census, and in some cases before the census, these lines will be redrawn, and the minority will always be unhappy. It's a delicate dance of consent, with Republicans giving their consent when they are in power, and Democrats giving their consent when their politician enters office. Throughout our time together, we have discussed the 3 C's of gerrymandering and consent: clarifications, complications, and conclusions. About 250 years ago, America became an independent nation. But is the perfect idea laid out in the Declaration of Independence, this consent of the governed, possible to even achieve? Well, no. It's not possible to achieve this perfect idea. But I want to leave you with a thought. I mentioned earlier that gerrymandering is a delicate dance of consent. Our country is so divided by party lines that roughly half of all voters will be upset with every election's outcome. I am not in support of gerrymandering, but it has stood a trial of 250 years. And furthermore, an alternative to this violation of our consent has yet to be discovered.
Now for some richly deserved applause for all of our Speaking Proudly competitors and finalists. While the tabulators determine the results of our final round, we turn from the really challenging part of this program to the really fun part. At last, it is time to learn the identity of our competitors. In the Speaking Proudly tradition, the girls will speak for themselves through videos that they submitted. Here they are, in their own words, our Speaking Proudly 2025 competitors.
Hi, my name is Maria Andrews, and I'm a senior in high school from Ham Lake, Minnesota. I'm a homeschooled student taking PSEO classes at Bethel University in Arden Hills. I enjoy participating in speech and debate and am passionate about using my voice to communicate truth. I'm looking forward to this opportunity to speak at the Capitol.
Hello, my name is Annie Burkholtz. I am a 10th grade homeschool student from Elko, New Market, Minnesota. I'm very passionate about the arts, and in my free time, you can find me singing, playing the piano or the guitar, and spending time with family and friends. I am beyond grateful for this opportunity and would like to thank all those involved for giving me my chance to speak proudly.
Hi, my name is Allison Carleen, and I live here in Boston, Minnesota. I'm a senior at the high school here, and I'm on the swim team and the speech team. I'm super excited to be able to participate in the speaking contest here at the Capitol. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Adelaide Dixon, a senior from River Falls, Wisconsin. I go to school at Liberty Classical Academy in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, and I am so excited to take part in this wonderful competition. Thank you to everyone at Speaking Proudly who made this awesome day possible.
Hi, my name is Kai Vanberg. I live in Hugo, Minnesota, and I go to New Life Academy.
Hi everyone, my name is Christine Gao, and my hometown is Blaine, Minnesota. And I grew up homeschooled, but currently I am doing my second year of PSEO at the University of Northwestern.
Hi, my name is Eleanor Kraft, and I am a senior in high school. I am from Ham Lake, Minnesota, and I am taking dual enrollment classes at the University of Northwestern in St. Paul.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Moss, and I'm currently a junior at Chesterton Academy in Hopkins. I live here in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I'm thrilled to be participating in Speaking Proudly 2025.
Hi, my name is Hannah Markell. I live in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, and I'm a senior at Liberty Classical Academy. I am super grateful for the opportunity to participate in Speaking Proudly 2025.
Hi guys, I'm Matria Reeder. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I go to St. Anthony Village High School. I'm so excited for the opportunity to speak in this competition because I think that it's so important for the younger generation to be civically engaged and civically educated. And I'm so excited to meet and compete with the rest of these girls.
Hi, my name is Gracia Severin. I'm from Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and I go to Champlin Park High School.
Hello, my name is Rosin Stang. I'm an 11th grader in Kimball at Kimball Area High School. I am in sports. I'm in volleyball and softball, and I'm also in theater. I'm also in Knowledge Bowl and a bunch of other things, so I'm really busy. But what I'm really most proud of is that I'm a really devout Catholic, and I love Jesus with all my heart, and what the whole point of my speech is to bring people to truth. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Vickers. I am homeschooled, and I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I am so excited to be a part of this speech competition. I love singing and dancing and piano, and I hopefully would love to pursue dental therapy in college, and I would absolutely love to be on a nurseryship doing dentistry there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aurora Voigt. I'm from Kimball Area High School, and I'm currently in 10th grade.
Hi, my name is Christina Young. I'm from Rochester, Minnesota, and I'm a freshman at Mayo High School.
It is so wonderful to know you all. Thank you for sharing a little bit about yourselves. While tabulators determine the results of our final round, I have the happy task of speaking to you. In my work at Equal Rights Institute, I have the privilege of delivering lectures on college campuses all across the country. But as a pro-life advocate, you can probably guess that what I have to say isn't always popular. A few years ago, I was delivering a lecture on bodily autonomy arguments in the abortion debate. And about 10 minutes before, this trio of girls marched in, adorned with loud makeup, huge female body sculpture earrings, mini skirts, and matching pink t-shirts with pro-choice slogans in puffy paint. They were literally impossible not to notice. They marched into the second row, notebooks and pens in hand, ready to pick me apart. Don't get me wrong, I am always happy to have pro-choice people attend my speeches and ask interesting questions, but having people that look more than a bit hostile walk into your audience is legitimately nerve-wracking. Like, what if they started shouting down my speech? Should I go off script and try to engage with them in dialogue? At what point do I ask public safety to remove them? I was a little terrified of what they might do. But here's the thing. They were thinking the exact same thing about me. 2 days earlier, this trio of female friends saw a poster for my speech on campus, and they were livid. There was an event happening on their campus where some out-of-touch pro-lifer was going to make fun of pro-choice people and indoctrinate pro-life students into thinking pro-choice people are idiots and murderers. Pro-choice students clearly were not welcome there. And if they did show up, they would be ignored, shouted down, or otherwise not allowed to speak. Their larger group of friends were so terrified that they wouldn't come. So the trio nervously stood their ground and decided to come alone. They knew this pro-life speaker obviously would not represent pro-choice people well, so they decorated their own pro-choice t-shirts and put together the rest of their loudly feminist outfits to make sure that the audience at least knew there was opposition. They honestly did not want to go, but they felt like they had to stand up for women's rights and make sure that this crazy pro-lifer didn't get to slander pro-choice people unchallenged. So they marched in, notebooks in hand. Let the showdown begin. But there was no showdown. As I grabbed the microphone, and I started my speech the way I always do, by discussing how I think society is horrendous at actually engaging with people who have different views from us. I'm really aware that there aren't really many good examples in the media of adults who can disagree with each other respectfully and productively. They usually just yell at each other, either literally or in like all caps on the internet, and they attack each other's character rather than the actual ideas coming out of their mouths. I think that we need to actually talk to each other and learn to understand each other if we want to have a prayer of fixing any of the controversial issues in our society. And I think that too few people are willing to take the time to get to really understand people on the other side so we can respond to their ideas and their concerns, not to just some stereotype of what stupid people on the other side think. I think dialogue about abortion is at an all-time low. And I want both pro-life and pro-choice people to be able to actually understand each other so we can communicate effectively. That is not what those girls were expecting to hear out of my mouth. Those are not the words of some out-of-touch, making fun of pro-choice people religious fanatic who might ignore, or worse, scream at college students. Those are the words of me, a reasonable human being who actually wants to make a difference. The girls sat back in their chairs and relaxed, possibly for the very first time in the 2 days since they'd seen my face on a poster. They made a beeline for me after the speech. They absolutely loved it and were so fascinated by my arguments. The four of us talked for 2 hours, laughing, chatting, thinking through abortion arguments, and brainstorming how to make the advertising for my speech more effective so that more pro-choice people would have had the guts to come. Let me say that again. Those girls, the same ones who decorated their own pro-choice slogan shirts, wanted to help me improve the advertising for my speech so more pro-choice people would hear what I have to say. They were just completely shocked by everything about me. They told me their whole backstory, literally laughing at their own shirts and how silly it was that they had felt the need to dress like that now that they knew who I really was. Because from the moment my speech began, they felt welcomed, understood, and like I gave them the space to really think through their own position and its implications. And they were incredibly grateful for that. But here's the thing. My speech did not pull any punches. I ended it in a very explicit climax. Abortion is indisputably killing. The only logical way to affirm equal rights is to protect the unborn too, and no one ever has the right to intentionally kill innocent people. Abortion is the biggest human rights violation of our time. I said that, point blank. Abortion is unjustified killing, and yet these pro-choice girls still had that reaction. They still appreciated my speech and wanted to get as many people as possible to hear it. Why? It's because I was genuine. I wasn't afraid to call out the bad behavior and logical fallacies that pro-lifers often use. I wasn't afraid to understand their position and articulate it better than they had ever heard even a pro-choice person do. I wasn't what they expected. And that alone opened them up to hearing what I had to say, even when what I had to say was ultimately deconstructing their beliefs. how telling is it about the state of dialogue in our society that we were both thinking the exact same thing? We were both afraid of getting yelled at by the other. And how many conversations are we missing? How many minds are we never getting the opportunity to change because of what people expect from us based on stereotypes? My fears about what those girls might do during my speech were not irrational. I have seen plenty of videos of conservative speakers being shouted down and even physically assaulted. But their fears about what I might do weren't irrational either. I've seen videos of prominent conservatives visiting college campuses where the speaker belittled a pro-choice student, refused to let her speak, and insulted her intelligence repeatedly while yelling at her. Stereotypes originate somewhere. I know that's a painful pill to swallow, but we all know there are people who would have done exactly what those pro-choice girls feared I was going to do. But instead, they truly listened to pro-life arguments for 4 hours because I took the time to cultivate a genuine relationship with my audience, breaking down walls and showing them that I am not the villain that they feared. Whether you're speaking about abortion, immigration, healthcare, or gun control, or any other topic people disagree about, remember this: the people who disagree with you are probably just as nervous about talking to you as you are about talking to them. They have stereotypes about what people like you think and how people like you behave. And if you want your words to actually change minds and make a difference, you have to shatter those stereotypes from the very first moment you open your mouth. You need to show them that you understand their position, genuinely understand it, before you ask them to consider yours. You need to make it clear that you see them as intelligent people with valid concerns, even if you ultimately disagree with their conclusions. And you need to make it clear that you're interested in finding truth together, not in winning a debate or proving they're stupid. And here's the beautiful part. When you do that, when you genuinely respect the people you're trying to persuade, you don't have to pull any punches on the substance of your arguments. You can make your case as strongly and clearly as possible, and they will actually hear you because you've already shown them that you're worth listening to. The arguments you make matter, but so does your character, your warmth, and your willingness to see the humanity in the people who disagree with you. That's what will make you not just effective speakers, but effective agents of change in a world that desperately needs people who know how to bridge divides instead of widening them. Thank you all for being here today, and congratulations to all of our competitors. Keep using your voices and use them wisely. Before we announce the results of our final round, we must deal with a few housekeeping details. Capital rules require us to be out of this building by 4 o'clock sharp. Please gather all your belongings so you can make a speedy exit. Those of you who use the coat racks will find your items just outside the rotunda on the way to the south steps. There's just enough time to acknowledge the role of families, teachers, coaches, and friends who helped our remarkable Speaking Proudly participants prepare for this day. Leaders don't just happen, they are formed. You all are helping to form the leaders that these girls will be in their homes, their communities, their state, their nation, and their world. Thank you. And a renewed thanks to all the organizers, donors, volunteers, and judges who've played a part in Speaking Proudly 2025. And most of all, thank you to each of you competitors. You make the future look very good indeed. Tabulators have compiled the results of our final round, and it's time for those results to be revealed and the awards to be made. First, I will announce the third place winner. After she receives her award, I will announce the second place winner. Please allow that speaker to be honored for her accomplishment. The time to celebrate our first place winner will be after her name is announced. Jean, may we have the envelope? We don't have the envelope yet. Okay, no worries. While we're waiting, I will take a moment to say to you girls, when I announce each of the winners, third place, then second place, then first place, come on up these stairs. We have a trophy for you, as well as one of those lovely giant checks. We are going to get a picture, so come on up here. I'll present those. We'll pause, smile, look out for a photo, and then go back down for the next girl. It looks like we're ready to go. All right, Jean, may we have the envelope containing the name of our third place winner? Oh, they're all in one, okay. All right. The Speaking Proudly 2025 third place trophy and a cash prize of $1,500 goes to speaker number 510, Christine Gao, speaker 510. And now, the second prize winner. The Speaking Proudly 2025 second place trophy and a cash prize of $2,000 goes to speaker number 515, Eleanor Kraft, speaker 515. And as you already know, the Speaking Proudly 2025 Championship Trophy and first place cash prize of $2,500 goes to speaker number 640, Adelaide Dixon, 640. Congratulations to our winners and to all our Speaking Proudly competitors. I think I speak for all of us in saying that we can hardly wait to see where your talent and resolve take you in the years ahead. For now, please all gather your belongings and have a safe trip home. Thank you all for being part of Speaking Proudly 2025.